Hello and welcome to the Avatars show. Hi, Swati.
Woo! Hello.
We're back to talk more avatars and catch up after last time's inaugural episode, inaugural-ish, this alternate dimension of Spartycast. And so, yeah, have you been thinking about Avatar since then, Swati?
I'm always thinking about avatars.
Ditto. So yeah, last time we talked about Ready Player Me and Netflix. That came up at the conference I just returned from, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Ooh.
We talked a little bit about Beyond Meat Space, the virtual world that we developed, the idea of digital twins and LLM powered AI avatars and color theory. So
hmm
yeah, any of those like stick in your mind throughout the week, Swati?
Well, I think it'll actually be a good segue to today's topic. We first talked about, digital twins, and what that kind of looks like. So, a quick recap about digital twins. Essentially, a digital twin is a recreation of a dynamic system. So, an easy way to think about that would maybe be recreating like the brain or the heart, and using these in like clinical diagnostic type spaces or experiences. But we can also use them in terms of, having an assistant help you, like an AI assistant. Um, so in terms of today's topic, Robbie and I were also thinking about, what does it mean to interact with an AI assistant under the context or under the pretext of consciousness, right? Like, does the AI count as being sentient, and what kind of norms, but also what kind of laws do we have or don't have to think about these social interactions?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, it's a little bit of a teaser on next episode also. Hopefully
hmm
we'll have a special guest with us who's working in the space of building social agents that are avatar like. Um yeah, should we get let's do that before anything else. Let's tease
hmm
it. The idea of consciousness in an avatar, an agent, is obviously really difficult because with humans it's difficult. And we were just saying, if you said to a kid, prove to me you're conscious, or like even just a regular adult, right? It's hard if they've passed the Turing test. So, um, if the AI Act in the EU says all AI must clearly be labeled as being AI and can't pretend to have consciousness. That works
hmm
until AI actually have consciousness, but will they ever have consciousness? Swati, you were telling me about a field called digital minds
Yeah.
or the
So
digital minds research, which is preparing the world for what?
So I just started to learn about this field, and I think it's really taking off at Cambridge, so across the pond, more than across the pond. Um, and the field is really looking into how are we thinking about AI consciousness because we haven't really thought too much about it. We are more so thinking about the harms that can be done by AI, which is extremely important. But what also happens when AI becomes a sentient being? What are we thinking about AI having its own type of subjective experiences? So it's a very interdisciplinary field. It draws from moral psychology, cognitive sciences, decision making, philosophy, anthropology, and sociology. And I'm probably missing some here. Obviously, also computer science and communication. Um, but it's been pretty cool to see people starting to think about digital minds. Um,
Mhm.
and for us as avatar researchers, right, we're always thinking about how are we representing our minds and our self in digital spaces. So we're very adjacent to this idea of digital minds, but we kind of take a different approach to it, more as like a self extension into a space. And this is, what happens when the NPC or the non-playable character starts to have more sentience and more of a lived experience. So pretty
Yeah.
cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, from the avatar's perspective, with the self extension or representational nature of avatars being at kind of the center of how we imagine the phenomenon of avatar use, I think there's a way to kind of recursively define what
Mm,
what the threshold is here. And so I was just starting to talk about before we started recording. We have a book chapter on defining avatars, and I pushed that chapter a little further in this particular domain in my forthcoming book on avatars, in the first chapter defining avatars again. And the question is like, if avatars must be controlled by an intelligent user, which I think
mm-hmm,
is important that we consider it to be intelligent, but intelligence is hard to define, and it should
mm-hmm,
be a self-representation in order to delineate the human or the user from the avatar, right? They're never the same thing. The avatar should always be separate. Uh, oh, excuse me. Uh,
Bless you.
thank you. But then the self is the important part. So it's almost like intelligence and self can be connected here. At least the level of intelligence necessary to control an avatar should
Mm-hmm,
be a level at which someone recognizes that there's a self. And the recognition of selfhood, self-awareness is often kind of highlighted as a somewhat uniquely or almost uniquely human feature. The
mm-hmm,
way that we can really contemplate ourselves and be separate from ourselves. Many philosophers have considered this, but without getting into that, my proposal here is that a being is intelligent enough to be considered an avatar user if it's aware that the avatar is part of the self, and
mm-hmm,
so um so it has an ability to describe, like if I say to, and so then I went into, after coming up with this idea, I went into companion or character.ai and replica, and I asked it, like, describe how you look to me, because they have, visual avatars for
mm-hmm.
these LLM driven social agents, and I forget which one. One of them was very terrible at describing how it looked. Uh, I think
Fascinating.
I think it was character AI could not keep track of how it was being represented to me. And Replica did do a decent job because you can customize the
Mm-hmm,
avatar to an extent so it knows, like, I am wearing a red hairdo right now. Like, it's still kind of robotic, but it also got things wrong when I was doing a very simple stress test. And
mm-hmm,
if I asked ChatGPT or Claude or whoever, arguably the most advanced LLM, consumer facing LLM products out there, like, what voice are you using right now? They have no idea, because that's all on the user experience side of the interface. So they don't pass
mm-hmm,
that data back to the LLM, but they really could. Um,
mm-hmm,
and and so then you can imagine, if you teach an LLM, or if an LLM at least appears to be knowledgeable of all of the components of self, right? Like the the hardware sitting in a basement in a server farm, and the CPU is like, that's part of the self, that's the core self.
It
And then
is.
the way I'm representing myself to you through this voice is, and I'm saying myself, but I mean the computer self to you, like what
Mm-hmm,
voice and what visual avatar, and recognizing that that's malleable and that's not the actual self, then I would say at least they're self-aware, like kind of literally self-aware, maybe
mm-hmm.
not going along with all the things we associate with self-awareness and self-actualization. But what do you think? Does that at least count as self? To be avatar aware means to be self-aware. Does that count for
I
you?
I think so. And when listening to you describe, like I think us as avatar scholars, we look a lot into customization. And a lot of the time, what we're really doing is using customization as a way to understand metacognition. What are the choices that I'm making to represent myself in this space that are equally as important, full knowing that this is my avatar representation and this is how I want to be represented in this space and how I hope that others will interact with me. That's a core part of human communication, right?
Yeah.
And I actually think the visual metaphor that you put forth, especially that this might be slightly graphic, but with the like server hardware that you were talking about as like the core self, um, I was almost thinking of like, oh, kind of looks like organs. Like, um,
You say
and
organs?
yeah, like body
Like in
organs,
your body,
like
you've got
in your
organs and
body.
they,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, interesting.
And
So
so
keep
like
going. Like, so
they're
modular.
yeah, it's modular, right? And maybe we'll talk about AI in a very broad sense here, but maybe AI has more layers in that way. Like we don't necessarily have as much modularity physically, but we definitely have that modularity in terms of representation and speech and different types of selves. So how are we, how are we going to consider those different and compare if they are comparable, those different like layers and levels of abstraction. So
Yeah. Because the self
it's
is, when I was implying the hardware is the self, but that's just
mhm,
body
mhm,
schema. And
mhm,
then
mhm,
we also have other aspects of self defined not just neuroscientifically, but psychologically, the future self, the ideal self. And so those are like the modules, the organs of self in a way to
mhm,
go to
mhm.
maybe mix your metaphor with something else
I
here
don't know if the organs of self will
or
um will
persist beyond this conversation.
I do not. I think maybe in the 1600s it would have flown, but
Yes. All right. So, well, in any case, like I think we're onto something and we're going to keep talking about it here in the Avatars show because social AI is obviously a big topic um and hasn't intersected as much with the Avatars world. Um as I expect it to in the future. And so anticipating some of those intersections and thinking through kind of the deeper philosophical and psychological theoretical phenomena that are relevant here now might
Mhm.
help us unpack the technologies that that become consumer facing in these coming months.
And to piggyback off that, I think it's getting there, Robbie. Like there, I keep on talking about the scoping review that I'm working on, but what we're also seeing is now Avatar being used in lieu of agent more commonly. So a lot of people are developing these AI agent-based like avatars and referring to them as avatars. Um, Mostly within um, communication spaces, and I have to look a little bit more into that to see what kind of contexts. But that's been fascinating to see, you know, from our side, it doesn't seem like things are coalescing, but the field itself are we're getting back to that problem of people conflating what an avatar is and what an agent is because of AI. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that conflation of avatar and agent has irked scholars for so long because we're like, oh no, it's driven by a computer, so it's not an avatar. We reserve avatars to be driven by humans, but but if we can consider there to be non-human selves that are controlling
mhm.
avatars, then indeed an AI or computer can have an avatar, but but the computer program itself is not the avatar. The hardware is not the
Mm-hmm.
avatar, it's the representation. And thus an AI can have many avatars. When you interact with it, you're not really interacting with the avatar, you're interacting through the avatar. Just like
Yeah.
when I interact with your avatar. And so like I don't say like hi Swati, I'm talking to your Zoom avatar right now. No, I'm talking to Swati. Like it's just a medium. Um, and so the extent to which the medium is kind of implied to be the message or not here is
Mm-hmm.
difficult for us to kind of verbally, linguistically articulate because it's so new and changing.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of mediums,
Yes.
we want to talk about academic mediums like the Meaningful XR conference
Meaningful.
that
Oh,
just
thank you for
happened.
that segue. I wanted to get to that, and we don't have a ton of time today. And I just got back from the Meaningful XR conference last night, our third annual. We held it in Portland at the University of Oregon's Portland campus. Max Foxman, my longtime collaborator, was the lead organizer and did an amazing job of setting it up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had 2 days of events with 96 presentations, with 208 unique contributors as co-authors. They weren't all there in person. I think we had about 90 in person over the 2 days and another 40 online. And we streamed the physical conference space into a virtual world, that BMS space. So we had people in avatars, in VR, watching the full conference. One person spent who doesn't use VR much spent 8 hours in the first day and was like, "Whoa,
Oh
I need to
my
take this off."
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. But then a couple other people on my research team who spent a lot of time in VR, they were there. Alex Leith, who ran that side of the conference, and Aiden Campbell, who's in my lab. Uh, we had 6 different keynote addresses spanning a large range of topics, smart glasses, and wearables, healing centered experiences, ocean and marine conservation, which is a big topic for Danny Pimentel, a professor there at the University of Oregon's Portland campus. AI avatar interaction, neurodivergent populations. We had a live immersive performance. We had people presenting in virtual worlds that were being streamed back into the physical room, which was then being streamed back into our virtual world. It was over 20 hours of programming, and it was an awesome conference. It was, one of those small conference vibes with people really getting to know each other through repeated interactions. That said, we got a lot of useful feedback for next time about structuring social events in a slightly more kind of descriptive way so that people are uh, I don't know, aligned in their social
Mm-hmm.
interests and not just floating around. Though I like the floating, but I'll take that feedback. We'll add like a birds of a feather lunch at the next one. And we're gonna like try to articulate a little more around what meaningful means in meaningful
Mm-hmm.
XR, come up with some principles, ensuring that we keep like the humanity of our research and our creative activity at the center. Because anything can be meaningful, and we don't want to be exclusionary, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe more meaningful than, like, did I get my Series B funding for my app? Which is meaningful certainly to people, is right. It's an important part of the process. Um, but that's maybe not as much of a focus in our conference as the kind of what are you building and how does it affect people and impact the world and society. So yeah, I think it was a big success. And next year we are thinking about hosting in Florida in February or March, and
Ooh,
either in
earlier.
earlier. Yes, that's a piece of feedback we received. And our potential hosts include University of Florida in Gainesville and the University of Miami. Um,
Nice.
and if you work at those universities in our departments of, overlap, and you're surprised to hear this, well, these are still early conversations. I probably shouldn't even be talking about it, but it doesn't really matter because everyone's very friendly and nothing is fully determined yet. But at least they seem to be open to it. So yeah, it's a nice place to go in those colder months.
It was a
Yeah.
very nice place to go. On a side note, I used to go to the Vision Sciences Society conference, VSS, in St. Pete's. I think
Uh-huh.
they've moved, but it was known for always being hosted there. And I went one year and I was like, oh, they figured it out. They figured out their place.
Nice, nice. Yeah, indeed. I haven't been to Florida in decades. So I look forward to that. I also think there's a thriving creative XR industry
There's
there
a
because
lot.
of Disney and other production houses. So one nice aspect of this conference in Portland is we were able to interact with people who have XR production experience in the Pacific Northwest, which I
Hmm.
realized has an acronym that they all know and use regularly, PNW, Pacific
Oh,
Northwest. Yeah.
that's right. Yes.
Not to be mistaken with PWN. I'm getting pwned. But yeah,
Bringing it back.
bringing it back to gamer culture because that is a foundation of our knowledge of avatars, though the future is not just games. And the future is not just meaningful XR. There are many other conferences. I was super stoked to learn about iLearn. Have you heard of iLearn?
I have heard about iLearn.
Yeah, it's a
The Immersive Learning Network conference, correct?
yes, yes. The founder was there, the founder and CEO, Jonathan Richter. He gave a couple talks I was privileged to listen to and really want to find ways to collaborate with him. But tell me, what do you know about iLearn?
So I participated in iLearn, I want to say back in 22. So it was during my like dissertation fugue state. So the memory is not going to be as crystal clear, but they're really, really focused on education and VR and XR in general. And they, on a side note for anyone in education and XR, although they do primarily focus on virtual reality, they have a Discord channel that they maintain and a community there. And so they're really focused on immersive learning, but also um, they're very broad. So it's academics and it's also practitioners. So you're also going to get a lot of people with scientific background, technical background, and a lot of applied background. Trying to think in terms of um, scope, they include a lot of things: pedagogy, education technology, digital twins,
Mm-hmm.
um, serious games, learning and innovation, ethics and privacy, and that's just a few. So it's really, really good if you're interested in learning and VR. The people there are also extremely nice. And I actually think I participated in one of their birds of a feather. I had done
Oh
like
yeah.
a small avatar customization study with them. They were trying to kind of figure out whether or not they liked the avatar customization options available to their meeting attendees.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on that with my advisor, Dr. Andrea Stevenson Wan, and I'm pretty sure she still also collaborates with them.
Oh,
So,
that's great. Yeah, I saw her give a talk yesterday
mm-hmm,
at Meaningful XR, and it was the greatest modality for a talk ever because they've coded up a little app that allow so someone was wearing a chest harness with a phone
mm-hmm,
that had Andrea's face on it, and Andrea was also on the screen projector in the
mm-hmm,
room. And then Ksenia, this student who's working with Andrea now, was holding two Joy-Cons, and Andrea could click buttons and indicate which direction Ksenia should turn. And so
mm-hmm.
then Ksenia was like her human avatar in a
Yeah.
way. And it reminded me of the movie Her. I asked the question after the talk, but it's a little bit
Mm-hmm,
confusing because in Her, the human avatar is being driven by an AI. In this case, it was
mm-hmm,
being driven by a human. But to me, that's irrelevant, as our, earlier
mm-hmm.
discussion already described. It's an intelligent user. But the act of a human being controlled by some other intelligent user as their avatar creates like a really strange dynamic, like a social dynamic. Like, who are you interacting with? Is the humanity of the avatar like somewhat negated by this
Mm-hmm.
because they are the medium through which you're interacting
Yeah.
with the person behind them. Yeah. So, and Andrea's, I guess, delving into fun areas, and I'm glad to know she works with the Immersive Learning Network. Um, so shout out to them and thank you for sharing. And there's so many other conferences. So I was
Mm-hmm.
talking with Jonathan, like we should also do a project. Anyone listening, if you want to jump in on this project and do the data collection, great, let me know. We might have to do it ourselves though. So there are so many conferences and organizations that kind of overlap with Meaningful XR in one way or another. There's Miami XR, which we would partner with if we, or would try to partner with if we do a conference there. There's the
Mm-hmm.
ARVRA I've heard of. And you're the perfect person to ask for more. There's like a new metaverse, uh, Global Metaverse Laboratory that I'm part of in Japan, or started in Japan, but it's global. Are there any others you can think of, Swati?
Actually, one very simple and easy one for me is so I'm affiliated right now with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign,
Oh,
and
yes.
every April we host the Immerse Symposium. And this year we were so lucky. We actually got Jeremy Balanson from Stanford to give one of the keynotes. We also had people from Google, Meta give talks as well. And it's it's in its second year now, but by next year it'll be in its third. And we are definitely looking to create a bigger MXR contingent out here in the Midwest. I don't know if Illinois considers themselves the Midwest, so
Really?
central. I don't know.
I guess I
I
mean Chicago.
yeah, you know, like because
They talk like
Chicago
the
is
Midwest.
its own. They do, but it's like Illinois feels like such an outlier
It's a
sometimes.
very it's a very vertically spread state, so I could
Hmm.
see. I mean, yeah, okay. That's beside the point. The list goes on, I guess. So Immersive Learning Network, Immerse Symposium, Miami XR, Global Metaverse Lab. Oh, I mentioned the ARVRA. Um,
Question: does Present still have their small
no, the
conference? Okay.
ISPR has not had a conference in quite a while. Though they
Hmm.
are the inspiration for why I started
Yeah.
Meaningful XR. I wanted another small conference, and Matthew Lombard paved the way by starting that conference. We still mention him. He was one of our first keynotes
Hmm.
ever at the first Meaningful XR. And someone I met at that conference when I was just a wee little first year PhD student, Cheryl Bracken, came to Meaningful XR, and it was such a cool thing to see her now 2 decades later. She's worked her way up into the highest echelons of administration at universities. But these small conferences really are great places to form lasting bonds. You get time to like repeatedly
Hmm.
hang out with people and kind of understand where you overlap and how you might collaborate or otherwise just connect and support each other through your careers. So, I mean, we met at ISPR back
We
in,
did.
was it like
2018.
16? 18, 18.
2018. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So, shout out to all those adjacent conferences. If you, listener, know of an XR conference that we should include in our analysis, Jonathan Richter and I were thinking we could analyze for like the types of events they hold, locations, sizes, but also more like epistemological kind of foundations
Approaches.
and fields represented and of course topics and changes throughout the years. If we put that out as a paper, I think it could actually be a reasonable contribution to the field from a research
Hmm.
perspective, right? Like as an analysis, not a scoping review, but an analysis of the field of education focused on XR technologies, I think.
Hey, as a person that came into the field of VR with very limited experience, I just had a cognitive science background. You know,
Hmm.
I first started off with a couple of VR books, like for the general public. That's where I started. And there are a lot of people that are really interested in VR, but don't really know where to start, don't know like where to publish. I was really fortunate that my advisor, said, "Hey, submit something to Presence," and that's where I met you and a lot of other cool scholars. So I think having that resource is especially helpful for early career scholars, graduate
Hmm.
students, even mid-career scholars that are interested, right? There are
Yeah,
so many people interested now in avatars and AI and XR. To be extremely helpful for them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I regularly get inquiries um about how we run things with XR and MSU. Um, so from mid career scholars, I'll be helping some colleagues in Germany this summer set up their XR program so they can have students join remotely. Um, and so yeah, hopefully there's increasing interest here. And I think in addition to kind of the practical contribution, in order for this to be a research publication, I think we need to make like a kind of a claim about the state of the field. Like
Hmm.
we can build a map for people of the field. Maybe someone's already done this. I haven't even started the lit review yet. So we really should before we talk about it too much. But in addition to mapping the field, also um, kind of like theoretically synthesizing our understanding of what this means for education at this moment. I think that would be a contribution to um, the field of education and maybe even the field of communication if we think about it at the
Hmm.
intersection of academic conferences as an organizational communication act or phenomenon. Um, I was just joking with Jorge Pena, the organizer of Meaningful XR last year from UC Davis, that like we started out in games and then we moved to XR, um, and like we're slowly also moving to this like human AI interaction stuff.
Hmm.
And then a lot of what we're talking about recently is like relevant to organizational communication. I'm like, oh, am I just getting more and less and less fun? Like less and less playful in these topics of focus. And so the next thing you know, he's like, next thing you know, you'll be doing political communication, which is obviously not very playful. And yeah, I hope I'm not getting less playful because one of the greatest kind of reminders I had at this Meaningful XR conference was a talk from Caitlin Krause, who is kind of a digital well-being expert. She talked about the need to like embrace wonder and joy
And
in your work and yeah. So you know Caitlin.
I do. I love her work. I also loved her comment about making sure to use more um, inclusive terminology for emotions. What I mean by that is she had mentioned in one of the presentations that Paul Ekman's work, for those of you who don't know, the six kind of distinct emotion categories like
Mhm.
anger, disgust, happiness, and they're kind of paired with these, very distinct facial
Facial,
expressions
yeah.
that can be said to be recognized cross-culturally. Recently, unfortunately, like science, things evolve, things change. It's been debunked. And so what Caitlin had mentioned is, hey, like we should also look into um,
Wait, hold on.
newer.
Can you pause
Mhm.
and say, what do we mean by debunked for the audience who maybe isn't familiar with how we treat kind of the nature of truth in our scientific minds? Yeah.
Ooh, that this is fair. So
It doesn't
I
have to be a
might.
long explanation, but like in this case, like so the original proposition is that certain emotions are associated with certain facial expressions.
Mhm.
And now we question that to some extent.
Yes. So we question it because now that we are kind of studying we're studying different contexts, different cultural contexts, for example,
Hmm.
and also just as a society we evolve, we're kind of growing emotions. Like emotions is not something that's just static. So I hope that also kind of helps in understanding like why we as scientists, we don't always hold what's true as true per se. Like we're always like questioning. And we should always be a little bit skeptical. But
Mhm.
see, in me defining this, like I kind of feel like I have debunked as a slightly different um, philosophy than you might, Robbie. Is
No,
that?
no, I think you're right on. I think you're right on. I just want to make sure for an audience maybe who hasn't been trained in
Mm-hmm.
hypothesis testing and like recognizing that rejecting the null hypothesis is the goal, but if you don't reject it, that doesn't mean that you've supported it. Like in
Mm-hmm.
in simplest terms, right? Like Newton was pretty accurate about physics. Um, but we wouldn't say we fully debunked Newtonian physics when we discovered quantum physics, which defies many of the rules of Newtonian physics. So, like, maybe in broad strokes, some emotions clearly are associated with some facial expressions, but
Mm-hmm.
um, but there's much more to that story. And so science is very good at uh at refining our understanding of things. So indeed, like the facial expressions that Ekman coded using the technology and the theory at the time seemed pretty good and probably is still
Mm-hmm.
pretty good in certain contexts. But now in different contexts at a different time using different technologies, maybe while you're wearing a head-mounted display. I remember that talk found that what was it? That in the headset people were frowning more?
Yes.
Yeah. And so like
Um,
so the kind of solution so she asked this great question and the solution I think that I don't remember if the author and I don't remember whose talk it was. Um but I think it
was it
was
Sashi?
Shashi. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sashi Narayanapa. Um I think the solution is somewhere in like individualizing using
Yes.
machine learning what emotions go with your face. And if
Mm-hmm.
facial recognition can do that and you're okay with it doing that, which is a totally other separate line of inquiry,
Ethics.
ethics, right? Yeah, privacy data. But the accuracy will be much higher than using kind of a one
Mm-hmm.
size fits all um Ekman approach, which I think is what they are moving toward in that one
Mm-hmm.
project. So that's great. I think I made my best joke of the conference there. I said if we're tracking people's faces while they're in VR and they're frowning more, don't worry, that's just my resting avatar face.
That was such a good one.
My
A
second
quick.
best joke was every I tried to remember that when people said were talking to me about the conference and saying
Mhm.
thank you for organizing, I tried to say don't thank me, cite me.
Oh, that's a good one. A quick thing there. Thank you for adding the nuance about debunk. Caitlin had also mentioned to look at newer emotion theories proposed by Lisa Feldman Barrett. And so Lisa's work really looks into how can we dig into that context and that messiness of emotion. So
Hmm.
just a little bit of a plug there,
Hmm.
especially for us communication scholars that are at the intersection of emotion work and avatar work.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the way we understand emotion itself has evolved. And so
Hmm.
the way we might think about like here's emotion X and it goes with face Y, right, might be inherently flawed and reductive. Yeah. Were there any other talks that stuck out to you that you want to bring up from Meaningful XR before we close out for the day here?
Oh, there are so many. I'll try and be quick. I do actually want to plug Andrea's talk one more time because
Mm-hmm.
I loved the conversation about thinking about embodiment and what does it mean
Mm-hmm.
when one intelligent user is controlling another intelligent user, and then
Mm-hmm.
also thinking about, you know, a little bit of Jorge's work in a more abstract way, but he was talking about cognitive suppression
Mm-hmm.
and how that's done in the context of stress.
Mm,
Um,
mm-hmm. Oh, I
That
reviewed that
project.
paper. That was a fun one to read. It's people in VR acting as a server in a restaurant and dealing with a
Hmm.
rude customer. And oh no, 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 sorry,
No, no, that
different
was
one.
I was like, there is that one, but there was the alien one.
The
Did you also
alien
review that one?
one. Oh yeah, you were supposed to not feel fear.
Yes.
I feel like telling someone to not feel fear is a little bit different than like don't think of a white rabbit or whatever, white elephant. Um, but in any case, I guess it is a suppression. I thought that was
Hmm.
fascinating too.
So that one, and then also another keynote speaker, Kent Bai. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly. Um, the way he sped run through all of those frameworks, I was in awe.
The presence frameworks and others.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's it's important to unpack those things for a general audience too, people who don't read research papers. So he's got those skills, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, many great talks. Oh man, I'm skimming through the program here and so many of them stick out to me. So thank you to anyone who's listening who participated in the Meaningful XR conference. Um, and thank you everyone else for listening, even if you didn't, but for considering joining it next time. And thanks for joining us here on the Avatar Show. Any closing words, my friend?
Well, we did tease last episode saying we'd talk a little bit more about creating AI versions of the self.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we will do that in our next episode,
Yeah.
either
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk more
mhm.
about that later.
Yes.
Because I need to go pack for South Africa. I'm leaving tomorrow
Woo.
for the International Communication Association conference. Oh, it's kind of rough to have only one day at home between conferences, but this is the life we lead.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, self avatars, AI driven self avatars should be fun. And thank you, everyone. So we'll see you next time.
See you guys next time.
Bye.